Well, hey everybody, and welcome to the Daily Bible Podcast presented by Saint Church. My name's Caleb, and our hope is to help you study the Word of God every single day. Every day we are taking time to upload episodes onto Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, where we are reading through a chapter of the Bible, looking at the context it was written in, and seeing what it has to say for us today. Today we are doing just that by continuing in our study through the book of Daniel, by reading out of Daniel chapter 5. Now, really quick, really fast, if you end up enjoying this, find it beneficial, take a second to like, subscribe, follow, and even consider leaving a rating and a review. But with that being said, let's just dive right on in to Daniel chapter 5, starting in verse 1. This is what the Word of God has to say today. It says this: King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines, might drink from them. So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines, drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly, the finger of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall, near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. The king summoned the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. Then he said to these wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads the writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face grew more pale. His nobles were baffled. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his nobles, came into the banquet hall. "May the king live forever," she said. "Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. He did this because Daniel, whom the king called Belshazzar, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means." So Daniel was brought before the king, and the king said to him, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom. The wise men and enchanters were brought before me to read this writing and to tell me what it means, but they could not explain it. Now, I have heard that you are able to give interpretations and to solve difficult problems. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, you will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck, and you will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Then Daniel answered the king, "You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. Your Majesty, the Most High God, gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor. Because of the high position he gave him, all the nations and the peoples of every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to put to death, he put to death. Those he wanted to spare, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. And those he wanted to humble, he humbled. But when his heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven away from people and given the mind of an animal. He lived with the wild donkeys and ate grass like the ox, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven, until he acknowledged that the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and sets over them anyone he wishes. But you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives, and your concubines drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in your hand your life and all your ways. Therefore, he sent the hand that wrote the inscription. This is the inscription that was written: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Here is what these words mean. Mene, God has numbered the days your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Peres, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then, at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple, a gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. The very night Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. And that is the close of Daniel chapter 5. And in this chapter, once again, I want to remind you that Daniel is not written to be exact history. It's written to show us kind of this episode of events that take place for Daniel, who's walking as a prophet in this time, as well as is showing us the events of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, although their part is a lot smaller. That's why it's not named after them. Now, in this chapter, we are seeing that the kingdom, it's moved from Nebuchadnezzar to Belshazzar, his son. And Nebuchadnezzar, he went and he had humbled himself before God. But again, as we just read, Belshazzar, he is not. Remember, there are so many things that these people have done that is dishonoring to the Lord, that is outside the purview of what they should do if they were wanting to honor God. But this is a moment where they are just straight up blaspheming God. In this moment, Belshazzar asks for the gold goblets from the temple of the Lord. He knows what he's doing. And when he gets them, he worships other gods with things that God has said were meant for him to be worshipped. You got to remember that the things that were dedicated in the temple, they were not particularly special other than the fact that they were dedicated as holy and unto the Lord. They were set apart with a purpose. I've talked about this in past episodes of the podcast, but for something to be declared holy did not mean it was different beyond the fact that it was declared to be for the Lord, which is enough of a reason to hold it in higher esteem. So in this moment, we are seeing that Belshazzar, he is dishonoring God. He is worshiping other gods with things that were meant to glorify the Lord. And the Lord looks and basically through Daniel confirms, you're done. You're done being king. And that very night, he is removed from his high position. Once again, what does Daniel do? Daniel does not want his rewards. He just wants to speak the truth of the Lord. So today, it's a pretty straightforward story that we're seeing everything within it take place. Now, let me talk about what this means for us. What it means for us, I do believe in many ways, is that we must take very serious the things that are of the Lord. That's a really practical way that we can understand this, that things that are meant for God, we should make sure are truly honoring Him. If you choose to take things that were meant for God and use them for selfish purposes or use them for things that are the antithesis of what the Lord would want, friends, you got to be very careful, because the Lord cares about the things that we have set aside for Him, the things that we have said are for Him. So friends, I just want to encourage you today. May you live a life that is set apart. May you make sure that you have honored the Lord in the ways that He desires to be honored. But also, friend, may you be like Daniel, who when he is given an opportunity to share the truth, he does it boldly, knowing that even if the consequences to it could have been grave, he is willing to stand boldly for the Lord and speak the truth. Friends, with that being said, that's what I got for you guys today. If this was helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, leave a rating. If you have any questions, leave them down below. But I'm so glad you were here, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow because we're taking time to study the Word of God every single day.